So in a previous podcast from the CSAE, done by our colleagues Delius and Stefan Durkan, I really recommend listening to that podcast. They discussed the results of a large-scale experiment in Kenya that was precisely also looking at the impact of large cash grants on businesses and markets in Kenya as well, actually. And the findings were published a couple of years ago in Econometrica. And I would like to highlight why our paper and their paper should be seen as complementary. And because that's directly relates to some of the characteristics that you described when explaining the program. So as I said, when explaining a bit the model and the setup circle model, the impact of transfers on businesses and markets will depend on the market structure and on the type of cash transfer program. And actually the two impact evaluations, so our impact evaluation and their impact evaluation, look at very different programs, and that's why they are complementary. Delius and his team, they basically focused on one-time large cash grants worth about $1,000 given to about 10,000 per household in Kenya. That generated a large and sudden fiscal shock in local communities. So basically one-time large cash grants. In contrast, our digital cash transfer program, the one you described very well, it provides very small but regular transfers to more than 400,000 refugees registered in Kenya. And similar programs are run all over the world for refugees and for poor people in general. These programs are not one-off programs. They are like continuous payments. Sometimes it increase, sometimes it decrease, but it's continuous payments over multiple years. One also difference is that our program, as you described, is restricted first to food because it's delivered by the World Food Program, but it's also restricted, as you say, to certain shops that have been licensed, and we'll exploit that actually by assessing the impact of these licenses. And so the direct impact of these two types of program, of course, they will vary. Large cash grants are expected to have different impact than very small regular cash grants, but also the indirect impact are expected to vary. First, because it will generate different spending patterns. You don't do the same kind of spending with regular small amount of money than with a large cash grant. Also, there's the cash transfer restriction that may affect how transfers are spent. And also the regular transfers that are done in the camp context, they're more predictable. So for businesses and markets, maybe they can adjust differently. They can predict better and then adjust in consequences. And something else that is perhaps important to highlight is that the policy relevance of the two programs differ. Both are important, but the policy relevance is different. So with large one-time transfer, what do you expect to do is get people out of poverty trap, generate businesses, new activities. That kind of program is, of course, relatively rare because it's relatively costly per recipient. It has been proven to be very effective, but still NGOs, humanitarian development organizations need money to implement this type of programs. And by contrast, small and regular cash transfer, they're widely used all over the world, even in the developed world, for social and humanitarian assistance. And sometimes these programs, or often actually, as I've already said, it comes with restriction to encourage certain types of purchases or behavior. So basically, these two programs are very different, targeting very different population with different incentives. And so both are important to study, at least from a policy point of view.